Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here, and in this video I want to talk about The Promised Neverland. So the first episode of the anime for The Promised Neverland aired today, and that's primarily what I'll be reviewing here, but I'll also be sort of doing it as just a general thing about The Promised Neverland. Of course, the anime is based on a manga. I believe in English about 7 volumes of the manga are out. I, in the last actually couple of weeks, have read the 7 released volumes of The Promised Neverland. I've only got into it very, very recently, in part because I knew that the anime was coming out, and I wanted to go in knowing some stuff. I kind of went, I said to myself, I'll read the first volume and wait for the anime. 6 other volumes later, I finally am watching the anime. So, you can tell I like this series, and I think the anime in its first episode did a very good job at adapting it, and it looks like a very high quality adaptation. So let's jump in here. Of course, this is the first episode, so it'll be very sort of recappy type stuff, kind of just clarifying some of the stuff going on, going through the characters, the general premise of it, and so on. It'll get more review focused as we go on. Definitely let me know if you want to see me continue and do reviews of every episode of The Promised Neverland as it's released, or what. So, the basic premise of this, obviously, is that it's this orphanage called Gracefield House, and it's just, what did they say, 38 kids here, and it's run by one woman called Mom, or as we later find out, Isabella, but they all call her Mom. And as you go on, it seems like, okay, it's just this happy time in the orphanage. They actually all seem to get on really well. It doesn't seem like it's any sort of a tragic upbringing for these kids. It's just that, as far as they're all concerned, they were all born here. And at some point, before they're 12, they do end up leaving the orphanage. That is a kind of guaranteed thing, it seems like. Some of them stay longer, some of them stay less, but it seems like it's all very happy. And I like the setup here in that it's not your typical sort of action manga where you immediately get a sense of, okay, this is the battle mechanic and stuff like this. This is the way they're going to go about doing things. Here it is just very much this sort of family setting. Everyone gets along. Fun times, playing tag, the older kids kind of helping to look after the younger kids. And it's just little bits and pieces that seem very out of place and make it not this completely idyllic kind of existence for these kids. The primary one, of course, with the character designs would be one, they all wear the exact same clothes. It's all white, the exact same basically clothes. Only minor differences for obviously the girls and the boys. And then on their character, it is the fact that they have a number kind of tattooed on their necks. And obviously that's kind of questionable, but okay, we don't know the full extent of this world. Maybe that's just how they do it. But then the opening scene being clear of they're told to not go near a fence area, which is on the edge of the property of the Gracefield house, and they go ahead with this because they trust Mom implicitly. And you get other kind of bits and pieces along the way that make you question things. When they all begin to talk, you realize that okay, they primarily know about stuff outside of the orphanage through reading. They really don't know what's going on in the outside world. And especially the reveal that they get that they've never actually heard word back from anyone who has left, any kid who has left the orphanage to be adopted, quote unquote. They've never heard word back from them. They've never got a single letter, despite, as you can see, them being super, super close. They all grew up together, and some of the older kids have obviously seen, some of the kids come in when they were kind of newborns, basically, and see them grow to be 6, 7, 8, and leave. So it's this is the one big question that they all have of the kind of one thing that can't be sort of covered up, which is, okay, they're kind of living happy lives, but can you really just completely break off contact like that? And they sort of just accept it because they don't really know the full extent of what goes on in the outside world. I suppose the testing procedure as well, you can sort of say, is a little bit like questionable, just with how, just the way it worked. It seemed like this plant almost, that they're really zooming in, harnessing basically who is the most intelligent, and the fact that they announce the scores to everyone and they track it, and they seem to have really regular testing, and that it is a kind of key aspect of what's going on here that they just consider to be normal, but looking at it from the outside just seems kind of crazy. And especially when we kind of get on to, I suppose, the plot taking place with the fact that this girl, Connie, who's just 6, I think, and is being adopted, is being taken away. And by the end of the episode, you realize that the reason she's been taken away at 6, whereas like Emma, Norman, and Ray, our main characters, are all 11 going on 12, and they're still here, is because they are exceptional, whereas they kind of make it clear in little bits and pieces that Connie isn't the most intelligent. Like, it's not to say she's like an idiot or anything like that, but like she says, she's sort of slow. She took a while to kind of get used to things. She was only like, given the way the testing works, getting like half of the answers and stuff like that. But still, the aliens, or demons, I suppose, as we get to meet them a little later on, consider her to just be sort of normal, standard, but still sort of high-end meat, as we find out. And it's this huge dark turn when it happens, because it's obviously the older members of the house kind of testing the limits of the rules. They know that they're not meant to go near the fencing area, the doors basically to the outside world, but in this case they realized the connection that Connie had to this kind of stuffed bunny and felt that she had to leave with it. And they discover her body and discovered the fact that demons have killed her, and they've killed basically everyone who's left. And that it is that they are on a farm. It's not an orphanage, it is a farm where they are basically, they're fed and thought and do all this testing to basically determine what quality they are in terms of product, given that they're sold to basically the elite, the rich of this demon species. And immediately it presents so many questions, because why is the world this way? And that is such a cool question to be able to ask about any like opening episode of something, where you suddenly have to realize that, okay, it's a fenced orphanage, that's one question, but now it's run by demons for a demon society. And then the fact that mom works for them, and you saw earlier on the episode that they really care about her, and she seems to really care about them. But then you kind of realize that she's so two-faced in all of this. She can care about them all this time, but can so easily just escort them to their deaths, basically. And that's super interesting with her as well, just the fact that she can keep that act going and make it clear that like she really cares about them, while still, leading them to their deaths, like happens here with Connie. And especially the sudden like dark turn where like she sort of realizes that like she was the one who escorted Connie out. She must have known when that bunny stuffed toy was dropped, and the fact that it turned up somewhere else later on, she knows someone spotted the demons, and probably has an idea because she knows them so well. And obviously, she pretty much is onto the fact that it probably has to be one Emma and maybe someone else, because we see the scene earlier on where she notes that one of the things she likes about Emma the most is that she cares about her family. So Emma would be the one to make sure that Connie leaves and has her favorite toy. So I just like that contrast of, for the most part, it's just this really nice show with this kind of group of kids who really care about each other, but then the world building and the amount of mysteries just based around this simple premise are so interesting, of just how did this happen, and is this the way the world overall works? Is this a case where humanity at this point in time is literally just the people who run these orphanages, farms, and the kids within them and demons are the ones who run the world, or is this just one isolated thing that's being sort of kept hidden? The fact that there are kind of elite and rich of the demon society makes you believe that they are a sort of dominant species, but that's obviously to be revealed, and is just interesting in and of itself. Similarly, the fact that they are monsters and have very creepy designs, but can also speak and seem very intelligent, is interesting. That it's not going to be just a simple case of it's the kind of strong, intimidating but sort of not very intelligent monsters versus the sort of weak but intelligent humans. No, they have all of those traits as well. So that's, I think, super, super interesting. As far as the characters go, of course, we get to meet a lot of characters. There's a lot going on here. But Emma is our main character, and then we have Norman and Ray as, I suppose, our two kind of secondary main characters. And I like that they immediately make everyone different, and they do that just by because the group overall knows each other so well. Any character commenting about another character is basically telling us about their strengths and weaknesses. So we immediately get to know that, basically Norman is sort of top of the class in terms of everything. He is the most intelligent, best kind of strategy, tactics, and while he's maybe not the most athletic, he makes up for that with just how intelligent he is about using the athleticism that he does have. Emma is the most athletic and has really good learning abilities, so she keeps up with the people who are, I suppose, naturally more intelligent than she is, but she doesn't have a lot of strategy, at least right now. And then Ray seems to be like Norman's kind of main rival in terms of how intelligent he is, and very notably the way they play him is that he holds back from everything. Norman and Emma are always kind of like at the forefront of a lot of stuff happening, whereas Ray tends to hang back, but also comes in with key information when you maybe wouldn't expect him to. So he's this sort of mystery, and it's almost to the point where you're just like, okay, everyone else seems to think that Norman is more intelligent than Ray, but is that necessarily the case? And I think that's what's so interesting about him, that whenever the focus shifts onto Ray a little bit more, that's super, super interesting, because there's a sense of like, does he know more than he's letting on? I think a lot of the looks and focuses on him in the episode sort of make that pretty clear. So that just the fact that like we have two fairly open and clear characters that we know about in Emma and Norman, and then one more mysterious character who we want to know more about. And then kind of in the background, of course, they use Connie as, I suppose, the character sort of plot device, but just to show us, one of the cutest characters in the show and the kind of brutality that is kind of at the core of the story here. And then the sort of, I suppose, the highest up in the class, but just below the main three, are Dawn and Gilda. And Dawn, of course, seemed very close to Connie, so it's obviously the question going into like episode 2 and beyond is, what do Norman and Emma do with what they found out? Do they immediately tell everyone? And how do they deal with Mom in the aftermath of this? Because it is this, for them, world-shifting reveal that they've just got. They now realize that their mother has been basically killing their brothers and sisters, effectively. Complicit in what's happened to them, has been lying to them their entire lives. And what I especially liked with the timing of it, in terms of like the plotting here, was that reveal and that happening, their world being shaken, happened just after they'd basically all talked about like what they would wish to do if they ever kind of got outside. And they're all talking about fun things, and then Emma's time to reveal what she would do, and she actually reveals that I would actually want to stay here if at all possible, because she cares about the people around her so much. And then immediately that is shattered. She realizes that the thing that she cares about so much, a lot of it is a lie, and realizes, like Norman, they're going to have to escape. And that is basically the premise for the very early sections of this manga, is that how do they keep this up, that like they don't know anything while still planning an escape? Because they also set up in the background that mom isn't just someone who's like a good kind of homemaker, that she is super intelligent. No one's ever beat her at chess, and they seem to almost imply as well that like a lot of their kind of athletic stuff as well, they sort of learned from her as well. So that, you know, she taught them everything they know, so that makes her top of the food chain. If it ever came down to anything sort of physical, they would know that Isabel would still win. So that's an interesting reveal in itself. And just how did she get into that position with when it comes to her? How did she come to a position where like she is looking after all of these kids, including newborns, and is just as happy seemingly giving them away to be eaten? It's crazy, but it's what makes the series have such an interesting premise overall. The animation, I think, is good. I think the style is adapted fairly well, actually, from the manga. The style does take a little bit of getting used to, just regards to how he does some specifics on the faces, but I do overall like it, and I thought it only took me a minute or two to get used to it in animation. So visually, I think it looks great, and I'm super excited to see where they go from here. I suppose anything else that I want to say specifically about this episode, other than just that, like I suppose there's an art to doing an episode 1, and I think The Promised Neverland succeeded on basically all counts here. I think they did enough. They make you care about a good amount of the characters, so they did a good job at like introducing you to Emma, Norman, Ray, a scattered amount of the rest of the group, Mom, the idea of the demons, the idea of the world building. Like it's a close to perfect first episode in a way, and it's always a good sign with a new show that when it has a first episode as interesting as this. So that is a long-ish review of the first episode, but given that this is one of the most hyped new anime, especially of this season, but in general, because it is one of the new big three. Like, obviously, before we had One Piece, Naruto, Bleach. Now, the current, I suppose, newer big three, given that One Piece is still going, is My Hero Academia, this show, The Promised Neverland, and also Dr. Stone, which I also have been reading the manga and I think is really good. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not, that it's getting an anime. I'd be shocked if it didn't at some point, but that also looks set to be really good. But Promised Neverland, very, very successful start in my opinion. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the first episode of The Promised Neverland. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.